Good evening. The Who's today were on at Randwick. First time we've been back to Randwick for a while, as we all know. Um, and the track was good. The rail was in the normal position, and the wind was a nice solid breeze all day, straight out of the south, which had no effect on any of the results. The track played a bit funny. Um, the first winner, where there was a solid pace set, came from last in a field of seven, only a small field. But most of the winners were up near the lead, and then there was a little bit of a pattern set by, I suppose not Brendan Abdullah on Nichikara, although he did get off, he was off the fence all the way. Then the pumper, he set the pattern, I suppose, for the rest of the day. And they stayed well away from the fence. We'll get to that later. Today we were in the paddock bookies. The paddock bookies were in a marquee in the Ledger, where the general public were corralled into. You walked in the gate and you followed there's only one way to go. It was a bit of a maze. And you found your way to the marquees up in the old Ledger Reserve, and that's where we were all day. But of course, the robots, they were down servicing the members at the screen odds. The screen odds, unfortunately for you members, you got a fair deal, I suppose. You got a fair deal. There wasn't much there for the robot captains. But there was a lot less where we were up there in the marquee, I tell you now. And you were down there bludging off the prices, as you always do, servicing all the members, letting them take under the odds. Anyway, now the first race was won by It's a Done Deal. And as I said, it was the runner that came from furthest back all day, only a small field, but came from last. We started off on the screen, unfortunately, for you robots, it was only 99.6, but down where we were, there was as little as 91% given in the first. This is what we gave. There was $4.80 given Ninth Legion. There was $8 given about Honduras. There was $4.80 given about the winner. The winner, $4.80. You wouldn't have seen that. It's a done deal. $26 the next one, Rowie. There was $3.60 given about $3.70. No, what am I talking about? There was $4 I saw, $4 Lunarise, 50 to 1 strength, and I didn't want to miss the bottom one, King of Olympia. I gave $15. Only started $9. Doesn't sound any good to me. And down the outside, coming from last, was It's a Done Deal. There was plenty of pace in the race. The leader was Strength, ridden by the pumper. He had to make a bit of use of it to get to the lead, raced keenly on him, and that, as I say, made it a bit of a fast run race, a little bit faster than he wanted to go, and sail down the outside came It's a Done Deal from Honduras, who sat back in third last position. It went inside runners. Holding on to third after getting a good card up was Lunarise. And the leader, or the horse that had the lead early but gave it up to Lunarise, King of Olympia, it ran fourth, and they got right away from the other three runners. Well, I suppose the winner wasn't a bad win. I'm not too sure about those horses. Race 2 on the screen, only 102.9 in the marketplace, only 96, of course. Ichikara won this race, went from $4.40 out to $6, sat outside the lead, and when they turned for home, leading inside, it was Raceway. It might have come back, or it might be something wrong with this horse. Raceway, it gave in fairly easy. Ichikara was able to get straight past it as they topped the rise, and went on and won by about 2.3 lengths. And coming from second last down the outside was Villa Splendida, who's got a new trainer in Gerald Ryan, went from GK White stable at Hawkesbury. It made up plenty of ground, but was beaten, as I say, the 2.3 lengths. And running third was Aguida along near the fence, went from $6 out to $7.50 on my board anyway. It was no good. It was no good. There were runners that were very hard to lay. Destruction number 2. It only went from $4.40 to $9. Didn't have a price. And Aguida, I even found hard to lay. I was top odds all the time. 750 only I got a bit of section out of it. And look, it wasn't there wasn't much action in the race betting wise, except what am I talking about? Except for the favourite, Relaxed and Happy, who ran last. I am going bananas. This is why the others got out. It was sensationally back. You would have had a nice book if you went off the top odds. Yes, I did see $4.40 or maybe even $4.60 given on the fence about this runner, Relaxed and Happy. It did start $2.80. It was 7 to 2 to took the $3. Killed you for $3 at the death. It started $2.80, and it had a charmer. It sat in 4th position on the back of the winner, and when they turned for home, it was in reverse. It pulled up with a poor recovery rate, but it got beat a long way, over 12 lengths. Coming to the third race, on the screen, 102.6 in the marketplace, less than that, 98. That's all we gave, and this was a surprise leader in the favourite, Jacquinot Bay. It went straight to the lead. He showed plenty of initiative. The brilliant Brendan, the brilliant Blake rode it, Blake Shin, and as Mark Sheen said, there wouldn't have been one map maker in Australia having a going straight to the lead. But Shin explained to the Stipes that after he jumped, there was no pace. He was up near the lead. The horse jumped very well, so he just let it stride and went straight to the lead. And it did stay fairly close to the fence all the way, with the second horse sitting on its outside, Gangster's Choice, and they fought it out all the way down the straight. I think I might have said to you it's a horse to follow. It's the only one I've told you to follow, I think, and it got home, Jacquinot Bay. It's a very, very genuine horse. I like its racing style, and we'll never know. But as I said, at Warwick Farm that day behind Strawberry Boy Gay's horse, I wonder if it wouldn't have copped the Pratt on the turn. It was very elusive. It didn't. Looking at the film, wasn't as severe as it was if you were down on the turn, where it lost a good 3 lengths that day. It got turned inside out. But anyway, it made amends for it today. And as I say, it led all the way, and it showed plenty of ticker. And not that, look, if you did back it today, I'm not saying be on it next start. So you might have been able to get something out of it. Those pair got away from the others. It was 1.5 lengths away to a horse called Less Is More, who was resuming from a spell coming from overseas. This horse sat midfield near the fence, and it got held up slightly, and it found the line fairly well. There are a lot of disappointing runs in this race, especially from the favourite High on Believing. It stayed close to the fence from barrier 1, and it was sensationally back. It opened up $4, and it was taken straight away by the pros. They had a large plate of this, and it did start only $3. It was 3s to 2s, it went fairly ordinary. There are a couple of runners in this race. Flaming Rock, it pulled up acutely lame, and of course Kling Gladiator, it bled for the second time, so it's barred from racing in Australia. That's about all I'd say there. The winner was the best run in the race. Next race, on the screen, they missed a few here, the price boys, 105.4, but in the marketplace, it was only a 94% only in the marketplace. And as I've said to you before, I'm glad I'm not allowed to bet on protests. Bookies aren't allowed to bet on protests or photo finishes because mob will possibly take advantage of the punters. But the punters, you're allowed to bet on the mechanical horses and dogs and trots. You've got a good chance there. We're not taking advantage of you punters betting on the mechanical horses with the tab, whatever they call themselves. You're not being taken advantage of there. You've got none. You've got no hope. So really, you are being taken advantage of. There should be a law against it. But anyway, those who put their money in must be the best steam tugs of all times. This was shows you what a good rider this boy is. Jimmy the Pumper, Cassidy. He went straight to the front on Longport. It was 100-1 on my board, and I had a bad result on this race. The second horse was better for me, and he led, was 5 or 4. He shifted off the well off the fence, or shifted off the fence coming for turn, and then got out under a little bit of pressure after topping the rise, and then kept on going in with Norzita coming from about 5th or 6th position, racing up to him after they topped the rise, and he followed him in, and they brushed a couple of times. Look, opinions on the protest in the ring were it was I'd have to say it was a favourite to be dismissed, but the Stipes, they saw it another way. The margin was only a nose, and they said that brush cost it the nose, and the placings were reversed. Getting the race after being nutted on the line was Longport, and Norzita was relegated back to 2nd place. This race, I did start $2.70 on my board, Dear Demi, and I would have liked to have got some more out of it at the finish, but I couldn't. The figures were very, very skinny. What you see and what you get are two different things. As much as $5.50 was given about Maydung. I didn't want to miss Norwich, the Norzita, even though I got beat. I gave as much as $6. Started $5.50 on my board. It was very hard to lay Jaden Marauder. Went from $4.60 out to $7, back into $6.50 because the figures were so bad. There was a bit of money around for Flying Schnitzel, and there was a well, the bottom 3 didn't have prices. A little bit of money for Flying Schnitzel. They took $14 given, and he started about 11, and that was about the race. Just shows you what a great rider this Cassidy is, getting only beaten a nose but winning on protest on Longport. Race 5 on the screen, 102.4 in the marketplace, only 96%, and this was more or less the trend that Jimmy set in race 5. He went straight to the lead on Steps in Time, who was a designated leader. I had her going straight to the front, like everybody else would have, and he set a nice even clip, but as you would have seen on the head-on shot down the side, he was always well off the fence. And when they swung for home, he was a good 6 or 7 horses in the middle of the track, 8 horses out, and you knew he was going to be hard to beat. I think I might have pointed out to you, overlook his run at Warwick Farm, where the track there is completely chopped up, but also that he ran into the wind there. And from memory, I think I might have said, well, its run was a little bit better than it looked last start, and it proved it today, as I say, by for a start getting a great ride from Jimmy the Pumper again, leading. And when he topped the rise, he was always going to be hard to run down. Looking at him was Nash on Wild and Proud, who finished up. He couldn't come around him if Jimmy went out too wide, and he made him come inside him. He got beat him by, well, it finished up running 3rd, Wild and Proud, beaten 1.4, and coming from 3rd last up along the fence, but not close to it, but because they all stayed away from it, turning for home, was Sedcom, who made up plenty of ground and got inside Wild and Proud to run 2nd, beaten 1.3. The reason the winner got home, it was just the great ride. If he would have stayed close to the fence, maybe, and let Wild and Proud come up and outside of him, of course the others would have got wider in the straight, we might have had a different result. The betting in this race, there was a bit of money for number 1, Herculean Prince, at one stage at $30. Steps in Time, started $6.50 on my board, unlayable. But at one stage in the betting, they killed you for $6. Killed you for $6. It was into $5, maybe $5.50, hard to get. Torio's Quest, you could lay it at $4.60 and $4.80, but it started at that price on my board. But at one stage, they did kill you for the $4.60. I made maybe even $4.40. Yes, you did. You could have laid it at $4.40 for whatever you wanted. Wild and Proud, They took $8 about it. Speediness was always firm. They gave $6, and he started $5.50. Right towards the finish, Sedcom, it started favourite, extremely well backed. Was 7-2 out of $4.60 or $4.40 out to $5. It did start only very well backed in the last few minutes of betting, only $4 favourite. And the sensational big plunge on the day, it would have ripped a bucketful out of the ring if it would have got home, was Dare to Dream, trained by Cummings. This runner having its first start from coming from overseas, ridden by James McDonald. With one board earlier on, put up $26, and it wasn't laid at that price, I don't think, but there was $20, plenty of $20 given, and it was 20s into 5s, $20 into $6, hard to get. A lot of boards only had $5.50 when they jumped, and it did settle down last on the fence and never left the fence and ran into about 6th position, beaten 4.4 lengths. So they must have thought it had a great chance, but they left the money in the bookies' satchels in that race. Now in race 6 we get to the George Main, the weight for age race, the main race of the day. On the screen 102, but unfortunately there was about 7 less in the marketplace, only 95%. You wouldn't have seen it on the screen, but Shootout was $5.50 was given. A blind man on the fence could have got $5. It was only, the best luck was $4.80, I think. There was $6 given about Rangy Randu. There was $8 to $9.50 at the finish, Dane Lee. Something Any Pin was $13 on my board when they jumped. Secret Admirer, $5.50 given. I think that was in the flux. $26 Yosei on my board, 101 Quintessential. And the bottom one, I didn't want to miss it all too hard. It started $4.20 favourite. I gave $5 about it, and it missed the kick. And unfortunately, this runner is not as good as first thought. But it ran a fair race. It missed the kick, hung in under pressure down the straight, and ran into 4th hole, beaten 3.1. But winning the race was Shootout. Going straight to the lead was Something Any Pin, who was the designated and everybody expected to lead. It went straight to the lead with Rangy Rangdu, stablemate of the winner on its outside. Huey on the winner. Shootout was from barrier 4, was on the fence looking at them, and on his outside was Quintessential, the 100-to-1 chance. When they turned for home, Huey was able to get a split and go out after Rangy Rangdu, who was able to get past Something Any Pin fairly quickly, and they settled down after they topped the rise, and it was a bit of a ding-dong battle, but the Shootout proved to be a little bit too strong, beating the stablemate by 0.3 of a length, and having every possible chance. Secret Admirer, who came off Quintessential's back, it was 2.6 lengths away in 3rd position. First and second were the best runs in the race. But no good booking-wise. The captains only gave 95. Very hard marketplace in Sydney, in Stole Steak and Kidney. In race 7, 100.1 on the screen, in the marketplace, in the marquee, in the tent, playing Cowboys and Indians. It was 95% only, and the Avery got the cash. Lamersbury drew barrier 1, and beautiful ride by proper Peter Roble. It must have been travelling well for him. When they were coming to the turn, he was 3 back on the fence. He was able to get off fairly easy and just kept easing off heels. And when they topped the rise, he was able to loom up to the leaders, and he was a little bit too strong for Murayan, who was sensationally back from $8 out to $9 into $6, excuse me, and he proved a little bit too strong, only being beaten by 0.2 of a length. Maroon sat outside the leader, Ginger Dude, who was about the only runner not backed in this race. Every other runner was. I'll get to that in a minute. And it dropped off Ginger Jude, and they were well out in the middle of the track. And as I said, Lamasery got up on the outside of Moraine and was a little bit too strong from the furlong pole to the winning post to win by that margin, only that 0.2 of a length. And 0.7 of a length away was the Verminator. No, what am I talking about? Was Lights of Heaven, who sat third on the fence behind Ginger Dude. And when they turned for home, he was able to get around that runner, and it held on very well. It was a much improved run from its last two runs at Warwick Farm. You wouldn't think it was the same horse. They announced that it was going to be ridden closer today, which it was, Lights in Heaven from Barrier 2, and at that, as I say, got beat the 0.7 of a length. There were lots of runners backed in this race. The figures, as I said, we only gave 95 at the top odds. $9 into $6, hard to get Maroon. Ginger Jude, it was maybe the only runner not backed. $17 out to 26. Class is class. I saw $8 was given, only started $6.50, $6 out to 8, back into $6.50. Midas Touch Me, even though it was 30s to 40s, it was liable. The favourite Lamasery, I might have had 370 on my board when they jumped. I lost on the race, had a bad result. It went from $2.80 out to $3.50, back into $3.20 at one stage, but back to $3.70 at the finish. Permit, I did have $13 on my board at one stage, but I laid it well at $11, believe it or not. The Verminator, they took the 40 to 1 at $40 off you. Stout Hearted was extremely well backed, $10 into $7.50. Polish Night, extremely well backed, $10 into $8. And Lights in Heaven, I did lay it very well, was $10 into $9, but it did start $13 on my board when they jumped. I think it might have been a bit returned a bit less than that, but I had 13 on my board when they jumped, and it was also backed at one stage in the betting. But even though plenty of runners were backed, the Avery got the cash. We come to the last race, and on the screen, a fat 112.7. Must admit it was all right. We squeezed 104 out at the top odds. I did see $6.50 given about Mananui, and $6.50 was given on the fence. I must admit I wasn't that keen on it, and unfortunately, poor old Mananui, he bled today, and he's going to be banned for 3 months. So whether we see him again, which we will, I suppose. But unfortunately, as I say, he bled. It was announced that he was to be ridden quieter today, which he was. He settled well back in the field, and unfortunately was eased down towards the finish. It was a fairly good betting heat. I went back. I laid 5,000 or 1,000 one stage. Mananui, and 4,500 or 1,000 just before they jumped. Started $5 on my board. Happy Zero was a bit hard to lay at $31. The Spirit of Boom was well back, $9 into $7.50, hard to get. Nobby Snip, I reached for it. It went from $5 out to $7. Took $6.50 off the finish, and we get to the winner, Pampalone. This was a very bad result for the captains. As much as $9, well, no, $8.50 was given. $8.50 about Pampalone. It did start 9 to 2. Well, it might have started $6, but it was very hard to get. The betting would have gone for another 1 minute. The $6 would have disappeared for sure, and it would have been $5.50 hard to get. Malavio, you could lay it at 19. It was $151. Almas Fury. Number 9 was Satin Shoes, would have been a great result for the captains. It went from $13 to $19, and it's only far by 0.2 of a length. It would have been a skinner for the Captain Cookies, but it wasn't. It wasn't to be. Number 10 was One Last Dance. You had to go 40 to 1 to lay it, $41. It was liable for something. Appearance, they took $41 and $31 off me. The next runner Renewed Vitality, they took $31. Famous Seamus, they took $19 into 18. Number 14, Mr. Armstrong, laid 6,100 at one stage, started 40. Rose of Peace, must admit, never cracked it, only for small section, 40s out to 100s. The next one, the same, a bit hard to lay, ever the same. It was $15 out to $20, and likewise Emotional Circus, it started $8, and it was $6 out to $8. A bit hard to lay as well. And the pattern earlier on, the Jimmy set, it was they applied those tactics in the last race. Going straight to the front from out wide was Nash on Nobby Snip, who dropped off and hung in under pressure after they topped the rise, and it got beat fairly easy. But sitting on its outside, coasting, smoking his pipe, was Hugh Bowman on Pambalone, who drew on the outside of Nobby Snip, and one had barrier 13 and the other 14. He was always looking at him, got past him turning for home, and sitting in behind the pair was Satin Shoes. As I said, would have been a great result for the captains. And Huey, when they turned for home, of course, he got to the middle of the track, and it was a little bit hard for Satin Shoes to get around him, so he had to go inside him. And I must admit, it ran a very good race. If he would have been able to get to the outside of him, he possibly would have beat him at the head instead of getting beat that margin, but it wasn't to be. And I must admit, I didn't get their positions in the run down yet, and I haven't seen the Tate Appearance finish up running third. I don't think it came from that far back. And as I say, it was backed, $40 given, and started third. I think it only started about $26, but it was 2.2 lengths away. First and second got away from the other. Spirit of Bird made up plenty of ground down the outside from barrier 16. It did miss the kick, and as I say, it ran on well. And another runner that did find the line fairly well in that race was Ever the Same, who got well back in the field today and had a bit of a checkered passage, and it possibly found the line better than all the runners behind the first and second. It found the line as good, if not a bit better than the others. It has a little bit of ability, but the track and the way that the winner was drawn and the way that they were riding the races, it was always going to be very well suited Pambalone, always going to be up near the lead. It didn't trial, and Timmy Martin, the master trainer that he is, he was rewarded with a first up win for Pambalone. That was about it. We're back to Randwick tomorrow, but we're racing on the inside track, the Kensington track. I'd say the Grumble and Grunters, they finished in front of the Captain Cookies today, but we'll be back there tomorrow at Crossing Swords to see what we can do. Good evening.